35 years after the then unlikely pairing of Jerry Seinfeld and Larry David first premiered their pilot, The Seinfeld Chronicles, both are currently enjoying a great deal of praise and attention. That's not nothing. I'm Larry Fedoruk, and this is Later That Same Life. Each week on my podcast, a different topic, discussion, or story from our lives.
Season 13, Chapter 1.
Unfrosted Enthusiasm.
Over the last few weeks, we have seen the series finale of Larry David's Curb Your Enthusiasm, 12 seasons over 24 years, and the anticipated debut of Jerry Seinfeld's Pop-Tart movie called Unfrosted. If you have yet to watch any of these, the following podcast contains some minor spoilers.
Hey, come on, I haven't seen it yet. It doesn't have anything to do with the plot. Still, I like to go in fresh.
The Seinfeld Chronicles, later just Seinfeld, premiered July 5th, 1989. It was a Wednesday. People still hung over from the Independence Day long weekend. Summer, traditionally a time of low TV viewership. But it was on TV, a rather inauspicious debut. The pilot episode introduced Jerry Seinfeld in a fictionalized account of his life as a New York stand-up comedian. We met his friend, George Costanza, which we later knew to be a character based on Larry David. And briefly, we met Jerry's weird neighbor, Kramer, based on David's real-life, wacky New York neighbor, Kramer. And trivia buffs know that in the original pilot, Jerry refers to him as Kessler, but it was quickly changed to Kramer after that. The Elaine character was not in the first episode, in fact, had not even been invented yet. Now, when we think of the Seinfeld show, we think in terms of 9 seasons, 180 episodes, must-see TV, #1 show, Emmy Awards, water cooler TV, catchphrases, yada, yada, yada. But really it began with that one show on a Wednesday night, NBC, 1989. Then nothing for almost a year. Then they were offered a 4-episode deal. The show now called Seinfeld, with the Fab Four as we would come to know them. Those ran in May and June of 1990. By the late 1980s, Jerry Seinfeld was already a well-known, very successful, high-paid comedian, a millionaire with a Porsche collection. Jerry has lamented previously that he did 9 years of The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, 45 times per year, killing each time. And it took that long before someone at NBC finally called him to ask if he had any ideas for a show that he could do on NBC. Yeah, what were they thinking? I guess they weren't. Now, one could argue that at the time, a show on NBC might not be in Jerry's best interests. Think about this. A successful comedian tries to do a show, and it bombs. Suddenly, he has the stink of a failed TV show around him. That would lessen his brand. And most TV pilots do fail. It's interesting. A Seinfeld Chronicle, July of 1989, then nothing for almost a year, then 4 shows in early summer, then a more substantial NBC offer, a full 12-episode mid-season replacement, and that started in January of 1991. In the historical records, those first 5 shows are known as Season 1. The 12-show mid-season replacement are known as Season 2. I know I'm getting deep into the weeds here, but this doesn't sound like the beginning of the show that would later be hailed as the best TV sitcom ever. There was this, though. Despite having odd air times and not being promoted that widely, each episode drew between 15 and 20 million weekly viewers. 20 million! Those are numbers achieved by only the top shows of the day. Cheers, Roseanne, 60 Minutes. Maybe NBC weren't sure what they had in this unconventional show, but they knew they had something. Let me add this about how television worked in the day, 1990. Yeah, we already had HBO and VCRs and Blockbuster, but it was only early changes of how we would watch TV. What I'm saying is at the time, network TV still ruled NBC, ABC, CBS, and an upstart network called Fox. Incidentally, Jerry was offered a full 24-show deal at Fox. Instead, he opted for that 4-show summer deal at NBC, because as Jerry has stated, he wanted to play in the majors. NBC was the majors. This is how we watched TV. Our favorite TV shows premiered in September. Usually around the same time, the automakers introduced their new models, often advertising them on our favorite shows. Every week, we made sure we sat down on a Sunday or Thursday or Saturday to catch the latest. A full season of a show with a September network premiere was 13 episodes up to the holidays, usually included a Christmas episode. Then during the holidays in January, there was specials and reruns and Super Bowl, and then new episodes of our show. That's what they would call the back nine. And that would drag us up until summer. Low viewership, a lot of reruns. Summer was when all the big movies came out. We'd be talking about them. Oh, maybe we'd still be talking about our TV shows like a cliffhanger, Who Shot JR? And then by the fall, we would start it all again. For the show producers, that meant 22 episodes per season. The goal was to last at least 5 seasons, preferably a bit longer to get to 150 episodes, because that number was ideal for syndication, and that's where the big money was. With 150 original episodes, your TV show could run every weekday, Monday through Friday, for 30 weeks before people would have to watch repeats of the reruns. Seems ridiculous now, but that's the way it was. Seinfeld was one of the last series to cash in big time on that now outdated system. And for a stand-up comedian to get their own TV series, well, that was great. Comedians did get TV shows going all the way back to Milton Berle and all through TV history like Freddie Prinze, Gabe Kaplan, Red Fox, Bob Newhart, Robin Williams. In Jerry's day, we also had Roseanne, Paul Reiser, Tim Allen, Brett Butler, Ellen DeGeneres, Jeff Foxworthy, and others. Touring 200-plus dates crisscrossing the country every year may seem glamorous and lucrative, but it gets old fast. For a stand-up comedian to get a weekly TV show means they get to live in one place for at least 8 months a year. Go to work in the morning, come home at the end of the day, buy a house, settle down. And if the show succeeds, then they can charge more for their stand-up appearances. So, in 1989, a very successful comedian, Jerry Seinfeld, gets a meeting at NBC. Any ideas for a show for yourself that we could put on NBC? Jerry says, no, not really. His dream was actually always to just have a meeting like this. But yeah, I'm interested. I'll think about it. Later that same day, he bumps into fellow comedian Larry David and instinctively asks him if he would like to work with Jerry on something for NBC. The famous story is that later they would go to a Korean grocery store together, and they started making fun of some of the odder items. And it was Larry who said, this should be the show. This is it, a couple of comedians walking through life making fun of stuff. Seinfeld show fans know that this entire genesis of the show was portrayed on the actual series at the end of season 4, when the fictionalized Jerry gets an offer for a sitcom Jerry on NBC. The show about nothing. Everybody does something. We should do nothing. The show about nothing. A descriptor that's stuck with them to this day. Larry David, about 7 years older than Seinfeld, who just turned 70, by the way, was a funny stand-up, curmudgeonly to be kind, famous for getting mad at the audience and storming off the stage if they did not find him funny. He had been a writer for Saturday Night Live at the time that Julia Louis-Dreyfus was a cast member, and the ABC knockoff of it called Fridays, where he also occasionally appeared as a cast member in a troupe that included Michael Richards. While at SNL, David reportedly became so incensed that one of his sketches was cut again that he quit on the spot, walked out after a huge tirade. Realizing on the way home that he suddenly had no job and no income, he confided in his neighbor, the real Kramer, who suggested that he just go back on Monday morning, like none of it ever happened. Just show up at the office, which he did. And it worked. As we know later, that entire situation was written for George's character. It is said that every Seinfeld episode had a basis in real-life experience. From dating someone, to renting a car, to waiting for a table at a Chinese restaurant, to being in a contest. The show had many groups of writers over the seasons, but it is also said that each script went through the hands of Larry and Jerry, that their words are in each one. Writing, producing, casting, editing, and in Jerry's case also starring. That is hard work. After 7 seasons, Larry David left the show. It was too much. He'd already become rich from it, and that money would continue to flow in as a co-creator, and for the last 2 seasons, it was all Jerry. David did come back to write the series finale, the much maligned Seinfeld finale, where the foursome's years of selfishness, disregard, and disdain come back to haunt them. They are tried, convicted, and thrown in jail. Jerry has said that the idea of the final episode was to have a way to bring back all the characters that had helped make the show over the 9 seasons and showcase them one more time. From the soup Nazi to lawyer Jackie Childs, Bookman, Bubble Boy's dad, Newman, Peterman, Banya, and more. Gold, Jerry, gold. Well, not. Of course, a huge audience watched and said goodbye to their favorite TV show, but reviews of that finale have never been kind. I don't know if I've ever shared this, but back in the day when everyone was guessing how the Seinfeld series might end, I made up a theory. And after the bad reviews of the finale, to this day I still believe my idea would have been a better one. Alas, they never called me. So in my Seinfeld finale, the head of NBC, Russell Dalrymple, he's the guy that offered Jerry and George a TV show and then fell hopelessly in love with Elaine. He quit his job because of her, joined Greenpeace, and then gets lost at sea, presumed dead. In my show, he's found alive, rescued from a tiny deserted island. He comes back and resumes his job at NBC, and he offers Elaine a TV show. And then we bring back all of the characters for Elaine's TV show. Not bad, huh? Eventually, David and Seinfeld and other cast members began addressing some of the bad reviews that the final episode got. Of course, most of them were also more interested in moving on with their careers. Julia Louis-Dreyfus having the most success on that front. And though she's done very well, a lot of people don't know that Julia Louis-Dreyfus is also an heiress. Her father is a financier worth about $4 billion. And she stands to inherit a good chunk of that someday. In 2009, Season 7 of Curb Your Enthusiasm, the premise was that Larry would produce a Seinfeld reunion show in an effort to try and win back his estranged fictional wife. Jerry, Jason, Julia, and Michael all appeared on that season, along with others from the Seinfeld series. We saw Jerry's apartment, the diner. Oh, it was great. And that season of Curb also acknowledged the original Seinfeld finale. The reunion show might make up for the terrible finale. So in 2000, Larry David signed a deal for an HBO comedy special. The idea was also to film him going about his day preparing for the stand-up special. Before long, it was obvious that the preparation by this generally miserable, complaining, socially awkward David was the better show. Curb Your Enthusiasm was born. And by this time, this whole fall premiere 22-episode model was long gone. shows started whenever they started. October, May, whenever. 10 episodes, maybe less, maybe more. And they weren't necessarily a half an hour or an hour. They were 40 minutes or 75, whatever. Sometimes they came out weekly, and sometimes all episodes showed up all at once. And it could be years between seasons. But yet, the good shows like Curb Your Enthusiasm found a loyal following. Last year, David announced that the upcoming 12th season of Curb Your Enthusiasm would be his last. As the episodes began to air earlier this year, it was clear to fans and critics alike that Larry David was heading to a finale parallel to the Seinfeld one of 26 years ago. Larry's behavior would be getting its comeuppance, and it would be in a court of law. People from past episodes would be in court, testifying to Larry's despicable character. Guilty as charged. Larry in jail, repeating a line from the first episode of the show, just the way Jerry did on the Seinfeld finale. And so it happened. We expected the credits to roll at that point.
Hey, come on. I haven't seen it yet. It doesn't have anything to do with the plot. Still, I like to go in fresh.
Surprise! Jerry Seinfeld, who was already part of that finale, appears in the prison hallway. He explains the legal maneuvering that saw all charges dropped. David is a free man. Get out of jail. As Jerry says in the show, no one wants to see this. Trust me. As the two walk down the hallway, they both realize this is how we should have ended Seinfeld. But realizing there's nothing they could do to change that, they just go, oh well. And then after a brief epilogue scene, Curb Your Enthusiasm is in the history books. And with a high ranking when it comes to series finales. Maybe not on the level of The Sopranos or Breaking Bad, but pretty good. Pretty good. Seinfeld has since revealed that they came up with that idea like 5 minutes before they shot it. That he and David were discussing the importance of a good series finale and the failure of Seinfeld to do one. Jerry said, well, we could fix this right now. And the idea was conceived.
Honestly, it was one of the most exciting moments of my life that idea occurred just 5 minutes before you see it in Curb. And then I realized that we set up a joke 25 years ago and just paid it off.
It's funny because only in this situation where two comedian show creators both playing themselves in separate sitcoms could this happen. It's not even worlds colliding. It's not shows colliding. Because Jerry and Larry are one universe, just with several orbiting planets. After the Seinfeld series, Jerry returned to stand-up comedy, doing a few specials. He did his B-movie and Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee. One of his first guests was Larry David, and that was the first time I really noticed how perfect they are together. As I said, at the beginning it seemed an unlikely pairing, but they were able to see it in each other.
What people did not understand, and still don't really understand, and someone told me, Larry said it to them the other day, is how our two brains melded together seamlessly.
Post-Seinfeld, Larry David golfed, eventually took on Curb, but on his own schedule. And just like Jerry, every few years he cashed a 9-figure check for further syndication rights for that show they created in a small Korean grocery store 35 years ago. Sometime back, Jerry announced that he was working on a Pop-Tart movie. How do you make an entire movie about a toaster snack? Well, he found a way. Unfrosted recently premiered on Netflix. It was #1 movie on Netflix for the first week. It's not great, but it's not bad. I laughed out loud a few times. It stars Jerry, Jim Gaffigan, Melissa McCarthy, Amy Schumer, Hugh Grant, appearances by John Hamm, Christian Slater, Bill Burr, Mikey Day, and many more. All those people together. It's hard not to have at least a few laughs. I was hoping for a cameo from Larry David. Seinfeld was in Curb. David should have been in Unfrosted. Maybe the cutoff line is, if we're playing ourselves, then we can appear in each other's stuff. In Unfrosted, Seinfeld plays a Kellogg's executive, working on the Pop-Tart. And hey, it's not like their careers are married to each other. Yeah, they're not married to each other, but they did have this kid together, and the kid is pretty famous. Maybe Larry David was offered a part, and he turned it down. I would have liked to see him in the Jim Gaffigan role as the head of Kellogg's. Mind you, Gaffigan is great in it, so I'm not saying, I'm just saying. In the last 25 years or so, Seinfeld, in Comedians in Cars and on various talk shows, appears to be trying to mold himself as an elder statesman of comedy, an arbiter of what is funny and what is not funny. He doesn't come off as likable as he once did, and I think he wants to be liked. Revered, perhaps, but definitely liked. Larry David, on the other hand, has embraced his dislikability, and to the point where we love him. I will always love and admire the both of them. They have given me countless hours of laughter. I watched Curb and I watched Unfrosted. I haven't even seen Oppenheimer yet, but the Pop-Tart movie, I made sure I watched it on the first day it came out. I think Larry David is funnier without Seinfeld than Seinfeld is without David. The best Beatles songs are the ones where both Lennon and McCartney contributed. David and Seinfeld and David. Not a comedy team in the classic sense, but a comedy team just the same. The series finale of Curb was funnier because Jerry was there. Unfrosted, which has not been kindly reviewed, could have been funnier if Larry David was involved. They don't have to redo Seinfeld or add another season of Curb. I just hope the two of them do something together again. And soon.
Later That Same Life is written, voiced, and produced by Larry Fedoruk. LarryFedoruk37@gmail.com. Subscribe to Larry's podcast YouTube channel. Get automatic notifications with each new episode.